So today we'll discuss about the latency and what is the first of all we have to be know about the latency. So if you know about the latency, I think everyone like right now or every day you are using some application and must be I think everyone experience the latency in the system or in the software. So first of all we have to be know what is the latency. Latency is a measure of how quickly data can be transferred between a client and a server. So it is directly related to performance of the system. So lower latency means better performance, higher latency means not a better performance. So that's one of the I can say definition I am trying to overview on that. So first of all, like give a, understand in the form of like some other perspective, like a client send a signal to the server whenever a request is made. Server process the request, retrieve the information and send back to the client. So latency in this time interval between start of request from the client and end to the delivering of the result back to the client by the server. So that is like round trip time between the client and server. So our ultimate goal would be to develop a latency free system, but various bottlenecks prevent us in developing such as ideal systems. So the core idea is too simple. We can try to minimize it or lower the system latency. So it takes less time to take a process our request. First, so everybody know like what is a network and this latency we are majorly focusing or measuring by the network. So first of all we have to know like what is a network latency. As I already mentioned, this client request response request duration, and that is defined the latency. You can see we have a client request that is going for the 150 meter ms seconds. The server then it is going the response in the 250. So network latency for this one we have a 150 ms plus 250 ms equal to 400 ms. How does latency work? And it is like nothing but other than the estimated time the client has to wait after the starting the request to receive the result. Let's take an example and how it works. Suppose you interact with the e-commerce website and you like something and add it to the cart. Now when you press and to add the cart button, the following event will be happen. The instant add to cart button is pressed, the clock for the latency start and browser initiate a request to the server. Second, we have a server acknowledge the request process it. Third, server responds to the request. The response reaches your browser and produce get added to your cart. So you can start a stopwatch in the first step and stop the stopwatch in the last step. You can see the difference in time would be the latency. And coming to the next point, I can say we have to know like what is the causes which create the latency. So it is depend on the network. I can say on various parameter. First network and its various parameter. I can say one of the major factor contributing the latency is outbound calls. So in the example, I can say I already mentioned the adding cart exercise. So when you click the button on the browser, the request go to the some server in the backend, which again call multiple service internally for the computation, and then wait for a response. All the add to the latency. Latency is mainly caused by the like transmission medium. Transmission medium I can see the physical path between the start and endpoint. So system latency depend upon the type of medium used to transmit the request. Second, we have a propagation. It refers to the amount of time required for the packet to travel from one source to another. The system latency highly depend on the distance between the communication nodes. Rather than the nodes are located more than latency. Third, we have a router. Router an essential component in communication and takes some time to analyze the header information of a packet. So latency depend on how efficiently router process the request. So router to root hop increase the system latency. Next we have a storage delay, and system latency also depend on the type of storage system using, and it may take time to process and return the data. So accessing stored data can increase the latency of the system. And how to measure the latency? And coming to the measuring latency, yeah, we have a multiple option. This most common we are using right now is the ping method. The ping is the most commonly utilized use measure latency, and it send packet to an address and how fast response is coming. And it measure how long it takes for the data to travel from source to destination and back to the source. A faster ping correspond to for the more responsive connection. Traceroute is another utility used to trace the latency, and it also uses the packet to calculate the time taken for each hop when routed to the destination. Next, we have MTR. MTR is a combination of both ping and traceroute. So, in the MTR, give a list of report on how each hop is network is required for the packet to travel from one end to another. So, this report generally include details such as percentage loss, average latency, etc. So, this is a we can measure our latency. This is the common method. And coming to the optimization, how we can optimize the latency. And I can say latency restrict the performance of the system, so it's necessary to optimize it, and we can reduce its latency by adopting the like some of the measure I can say we can use the https And in this we can reduce the latency by use of https to it allow parallelize transfer and minimize the round trip from the sender to the receiver. Second, we have like less external http request. It increases the beauty of third party services by reducing number of external http requests. System latency get optimizes third party services affect speed of the application. Next we have a cdn. CDN store the resource in multiple locations worldwide and reduce the request and response travel time. So instead of going back to the original server, request can be fetching using the cache resource closer to the client. And next we have like browser caching, and in this we can also help you reduce the latency by caching a specific resource locally to decrease the number of requests made to the server. And last but not least, I can say disk input output. In this, we often write into disk. We can use it right through the cache or in a memory database or combined right there possible, or use fast storage systems such as SSD. And latency can also be optimized by making smarter choice of regarding storage layer, data modeling, outbound call, fan out, etc. So there is a some way to optimize and at the application level. Like we can use the in the programming asynchronous programming model. We can use the better design pattern to avoid the locking because of the multi-thread lock introduce latency. And if we are using the inefficient algorithm is the most apparent source of the latency in code, so it is necessary to avoid the unnecessary loops or nested expensive operation. So that's all about the latency, and we discuss about the why latency happen, how we can measure, how we can prevent, and all. So I think this will be giving the more insightful information about the latency when we are designing the system. Thank you for this video. Meeting in the next video.